Hi, I'm Timothy Miller, and welcome to our series on the Joseph Code. In my personal quest for the truth, I found that the story of the real Jesus of Nazareth was a mystery, wrapped in an enigma. However, I also found clues. Little did I know that my system of belief concerning Jesus and Christianity was about to be turned upside down. Welcome to part 4 of the Joseph Code. As I mentioned in the first video, in my research into the life of Jesus, I decided to take a look at the genealogies found in Matthew and Luke. In an attempt to compare Matthew and Luke's genealogies, I decided to arrange them following Matthew's 14-generation pattern. Matthew's author traces Jesus' genealogy back to Abraham, citing 14 generations from Abraham to David, 14 generations from David to the captivity of the Israelites in Babylon, and 14 generations from the captivity in Babylon to the birth of Christ. The author of Matthew begins his genealogy with Abraham and works forward to Joseph. The author of the Gospel of Luke took a different approach. He traces the genealogy of Jesus back to Adam, starting with Joseph and working backward. When comparing these genealogies, I found an odd pattern in the genealogy offered by Luke. The purpose of the genealogies was to show that Jesus was a descendant of the tribe of Judah and the lineage of David. According to the popular belief at the time, the Messiah was characterized as coming from the lineage of David. This pattern would not have appeared had I not arranged the names in a 14-generation pattern following the template suggested in the Gospel of Matthew. Furthermore, the pattern is more obvious when using the names as listed in the King James Version of the Bible. Later translations alter the spelling of some of these names, making the pattern less obvious. When this occurs, Joseph is rendered as Joseph, and Judah is rendered as Jodah. When arranging the names, I left Jesus' father Joseph off of the list in Luke's genealogy, so that when comparing the two, they would both end with David's father Jesse. There are few similarities in these two genealogies. The only names that match are Joseph himself, his grandfather Matthat, or Mathan, as there are two renderings of this name, David, and his father Jesse. The odd pattern in Luke's genealogy is fairly obvious. There are a number of names repeated. The name Joseph is repeated 3 times in a sequence resembling a triangle or pyramid. The name Judah repeats and is linked to Joseph when this occurs. The name Levi is repeated and links to Matthat. The name Melchi, literally meaning king, repeats twice, once inside the triangle of Joseph names and once outside the triangle. The name Mattathiah repeats twice in the left column under the Joseph triangle, appearing in the 7th and 13th positions. A close rendering of Mattathiah, Mattatha, appears in the right column. As I examined this pattern, I began to wonder if I was looking at a genealogy or some type of esoteric code. Joseph, Judah, and Levi are tribal names, as they represent 3 very important lineages in Israel's history. These are the sons of Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel in Genesis 32:28. At this point, I was prompted to go back and examine more closely how these names might be linked to Messianic Jewish tradition. Little did I know that my system of belief concerning Jesus and Christianity was about to be turned upside down. There is not one, but in fact 3 Messianic lineages to be found in Israel's history. The first and most prominent is the Messianic lineage of the tribe of Judah, the forefather of King David. The second is the tribe of Joseph, the son of Jacob, Israel. Joseph became the vizier of Egypt, and he was blessed by Israel as the prince among his brothers. Last but not least is the tribe of Levi, the forefather of Moses and Aaron, the priestly tribe of Israel. It is of interest to note that Jesus has been traditionally viewed as holding 3 offices: He held the office of a prophet or prince, which has echoes of the house of Joseph. He was considered the priest of a new covenant, linking to the house of Levi. And he was also called the King of the Jews, which links him to the house of David. In Jewish history and literature, the most prominent messianic line is that of the house of David. The Messiah of David is described as the son or descendant of David. He would be a great political leader. He would be well-versed in Jewish law. He would be a charismatic leader and a great military leader. He would also be a great judge. He would come in the form of a human being, not a god. He would restore Jerusalem and the temple, and he would establish a world government based on Jewish law. I found that Jewish tradition also speaks of a Messiah descending from Joseph. Jewish tradition, in fact, speaks of two redeemers. Both are involved in the Messianic era, and the Messiah of Joseph is believed to be the one who will come first. He would later serve as the viceroy of the Messiah of David, and he would prepare the world for the coming of the final Redeemer. Different sources attribute to him different functions, some overlapping those of the Messiah of David. He is characterized as waging war against the forces of evil, and in the midst of that battle, the Messiah of Joseph will be killed. In linking the Messiahs of David and Joseph, the death of the Messiah of Joseph will be followed by a period of great calamities. These new tribulations will be the final test for Israel. The Messiah of David will come, avenge the death of the Messiah of Joseph, resurrect him, and inaugurate the Messianic era of everlasting peace. The sequence is not definite but contingent, and it depends on the spiritual condition of the Jewish people at the time the redemption is to take place. I also found biblical references to a Messiah descending from the tribe of Levi. In Deuteronomy chapter 18, verses 15 through 19, we find these verses. The Lord your God will raise up for you a prophet like me, meaning Moses, from your midst, from your brethren, him shall you hear. I will raise up for them a prophet like you, Moses, from among their brethren, and put my words in his mouth, and he shall speak to them all that I command him. We also find references to the Messiah of Levi at Qumran through the Dead Sea Scrolls. The Qumran sect also expected the coming of two Messiahs. My children, be obedient to Levi and to Judah. Do not exalt yourselves about these two tribes, because from them will arise the Savior from God. For the Lord will raise up from Levi someone as a high priest, and from Judah someone as king. He will save all the Gentiles and the tribe of Israel. In the genealogy of Jesus found in Luke, it's hard not to notice the prominence of the name Joseph. In examining this in its historical context, Joseph was sold into slavery by his jealous brothers and was taken to Egypt. He was imprisoned on false charges of having violated the wife of his master. He gained the reputation of a seer or prophet and was elevated to the position of vizier of Egypt, second only in power to the Pharaoh. In referencing the Old Testament in Psalm 78 verses 67 through 68, the suggestion is made that the line of Joseph was rejected, and Judah, the tribe of King David, was chosen to lead Israel. However, we find in 1 Chronicles 5:2 these passages. And though Judah was the strongest of his brothers, and a ruler David came from him, the rights of the firstborn, the blessings of Israel, belonged to Joseph. And in Zechariah chapter 10 verse 6, we find this verse, I will strengthen the house of Judah and save the house of Joseph. Going further, we find in Ezekiel chapter 37 verses 16 through 19 that the Lord declares the stick of Judah and Joseph to be joined as one. Under the united monarchy of David, the tribal territories of Judah and Joseph, or Ephraim, shared a common border. The tribe of Ephraim were the descendants of Joseph's son, Ephraim. And Bethlehem, the city of David, was also inhabited by families of Levites and the tribe of Judah. Levites also occupied the tribal territory of Ephraim. After doing my research, the question that kept coming back to me was this. Was Jesus the product of a triune messianic bloodline? If so, there was more to this man than the gospel writers could have imagined, and it appears that the men who attempted to write his story and those who came later had great imaginations. What they were lacking was a record of actual facts. If the genealogy of Luke can be interpreted as an esoteric code rather than a literal genealogy, we must assume that whoever composed this portion of the Gospel of Luke had this genealogy in document form, yet had no idea what he was looking at. We do not know how the original document the author of Luke used was arranged, but the pattern does not appear unless the names in the genealogy are arranged in columns of 14 names. Consequently, the number 14 is of great significance in biblical numerology. A multiple of 7, the perfect number, 14 is important as a double of that number and signifies a double measure of spiritual perfection. The number 14 can also represent the concept of deliverance or salvation. In the next video, we will examine the position of the names found in Luke's genealogy and the significance associated with these positions.